Good afternoon, members on my declassified Caribbean channel. Thank you so much for joining. And we are going to deal with a very important topic this afternoon. And we are still continuing on the whole matter of what happened at the Washington Hilton there when we had the shootout at the Washington Correspondents Dinner on Saturday night, something that is provoking a lot of comments on the internet. And we shall dive into this very important matter. So we're looking at dark times ahead for the United States under the Donald Trump administration. Is America heading into a dangerous new chapter? Under Donald Trump's leadership, serious questions are emerging about democracy, the economy, global relations, and internal stability. Recent reports of gunfire at the Washington Hilton during the White House Correspondents Dinner have raised fresh concerns about security, political tension, and the overall climate in the United States. What really happened, and what does it say about the current moment? In this video, we break down what Trump's presidency could mean for everyday Americans, the Caribbean, and the wider world. Are these warning signs being ignored, or are they being exaggerated? This is not just politics. This is about the future direction of the United States and how it affects us all. And it has said the popular statement that when the United States has a cold, the entire region will catch pneumonia. Very important that we begin to understand what is happening in the world. And many times we are deceived. I think 9 out of 10 times we are deceived by what we are seeing in the media. So this afternoon, we are looking at a growing pattern under Donald Trump's leadership, one that critics say is pushing the United States toward deeper conflict, both at home and abroad. Because whether you support him or not, one thing is clear. The temperature globally is rising. Let's start in the Caribbean and Latin America, regions often overlooked but heavily impacted by US policy. Tensions with Venezuela remain, I should say, and with ongoing economic pressure, sanctions, and political standoffs. In Cuba, decades-old hostility continues with renewed hardline rhetoric and restrictions tightening once again. For many in the Caribbean, this doesn't look like diplomacy. It looks like escalation by other means, and it is military force. And the question becomes, is Washington stabilizing the region or squeezing it? Then there's Iran, one of the most dangerous flashpoints in global politics. Relations remain volatile, no lasting peace framework, no clear de-escalation. Every move, every statement carries risk. Because when communication breaks down between powers like these, history shows us what comes next. And we know that what comes next is not going to be something that we are going to be cheering for or be happy with. But it's not just adversaries. Even relationships with global moral voices and traditional allies appear strained. Recent tensions involve influential international figures, including the Vatican, raise deeper questions about America's global posture. Is the US leading, or is it isolating itself? Is the United States the most powerful country in the world, or is the Vatican, a religious political institution, the most powerful institution in world history? These are some very important questions that we have to battle with. And for those people who are thinking that if the Jews are the Jews, by the way, the Jews, as a religion, have only what, 16 million people in the world registered. The Vatican, a very powerful institution that is over 2,000 years of experience. And talk about experience, world experience, global experience, is much more powerful than the Jews. In fact, the Roman Catholic Church has a population or parishioners of over 2 billion people. So we want to know, based on the institution, the Vatican Bank, and all of these things, who controls whom. And we know that the people talk about the banker there, the Rothschilds and so forth. These people are owned by the Vatican. They're papal Jews. Very important that you understand that. And then if you're listening to people like the Professor Sachs, right? And very important that you understand that he is a Vatican shill, right? As someone who is working on behalf of the papacy. And if you don't believe me, let me see if I can read you this from this particular Reddit, right? And it says here, the Holy Father in 2025, that is, I think it was August 2025. No, this happened, sorry, yes, on October the 10th, 2021, not 2025, or should I say October 25, 2021. I think that's the date. The Holy Father has appointed Professor Jeffrey David Sachs, director of the Center for Sustainable. He is the director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University in New York, USA, as an ordinary member of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. So Professor Jeffrey Sachs is a very esteemed member of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences at the Vatican. All right. And U.S. financial support for family planning services in low-income areas has been hamstrung in the past 25 years by the U.S. religious right, which has stemmed overall funding for planned services, slashed support for UN Population Fund, and instituted a so-called gag rule against support for any organizations that receive funding from any other source for legal abortion or for counseling on the option of abortion, even where legal. Now, some comments were here saying that Sachs endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2020. So yeah, that's the thing. Did you really expect Pope Francis to nominate good people to posts? This is a very important question. Very important question. And hundreds of thousands of people listen to Professor Sachs, and he is an eloquent speaker and someone who has also diffused very important facts, but he is misleading. And when he suggests that it is the Jews that control the world, he knows that he is deflecting attention away from the Vatican. And the fact that the Vatican is using the United States military might to wage another crusade in the Middle East, because the Vatican, the Pope, make no bones about it, whatever Pope is in office, is desirous of reigning from Jerusalem. The Vatican has always had that sort of dream, the desire to rule, to govern from Jerusalem, the center of the world. So when we see these people behaving as if they are diffusing truth to you, they're not. And the entire world, I must say, the majority of people are of the impression that the Jews are the ones ruling the world. That is simplistic understanding of the reality. And that is why we have to study prophecy, because prophecy is that which unfolds to us latter days, eschatological events that are going to have very, very important, they're going to bear and have, important consequences in our lives. Now, there is another article here uh, talking about, well, it's not an article, it's a video in which this young man, this, not young man, but this speaker, the host of the program, was actually telling us about Tucker Carlson, who is another popular podcaster and journalist. People follow him a lot and they think that he is diffusing the truth. I think last night he was on Redacted, on it, in which Clinton was speaking to him. I didn't watch the video because I sort of know what they were going to the line of reasoning. But when I saw the title, because part of the title was that the fact that the Jews control what is happening in Washington, D.C., and they do not control what is happening in Washington, D.C. The Vatican, we have 6 members on the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Bible suggests that a nation speaks through her laws. And the fact is that these are the people, the Vatican shills on the U.S. Supreme Court, who are going to, you know, talk about, who are going to set the standard for the pulse or the future of the US, okay? The United States of America. It's not the Jews. It's not the Jews. And you've got to study your prophecy, you've got to study your history, and you've got to stay focused and not just listen to people and articulate what they're telling you or what we're seeing in the media. And from a plausible, superficial perspective, it does look at the Jews if you're just looking at it from the naked human eyes. But that is not how geopolitics runs. We have to look at the forces behind the scenes. And that is why dark days are ahead for America, because of the lack of knowledge. And the Bible says that people are destroyed. My people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge. And one of the primary signs that we're living in the end is that people are going to be deceived. Large quantities of people are always deceived by what they see, by what they hear, and what they actually follow coming from the mouths of so-called scholars and intellectuals. And Professor Sachs appears to be one of, and he is a scholar. He writes well, he speaks well, and he has a very good knowledge of geopolitics, but he is manipulating. He is manipulating his viewers. And that is what we have to understand. And the papacy has always had that sort of gift. It's a gift. It's not a good gift, but it's a gift in terms of manipulation, deceiving, and in a very sophisticated manner. So the church does look sophisticated. The Jesuits are sophisticated, but they're brutal behind the scenes. And if you study them very well, then you can see the tactics that they're using in the political and religious realms. Very important that you begin to understand the dynamics. What we're seeing unfolding in the world is not just what we see, what our eyes can see, but we have to have a superior knowledge of what is written in the prophetic word of God. And you can say anything you want to say. Africa is not going to, your understanding of Black history is not going to do it. Your understanding of chemistry or biology or Spanish is not going to do it. It's not going to cut. It's not going to cut it. It's your understanding of what the most intellectual person in the universe, God himself, has to say. And isn't it very strange that individuals, human beings, would prefer to listen to an ignorant man? And that is one of the signs, brings me back to that one of the signs of the latter days, as the Bible suggests, is that the blind will lead the blind, and they will what? Deceived. They are going to be deceived whilst being deceived. So people are going to deceive you and others are going to deceive them, right? So it's the blind leading the blind. And where do we stop? Where do we go when we have these people talking all sorts of nonsense about who controls the world, when people yesteryear, up to the 1960s, knew that the Vatican, if if the Vatican should have gained, which it has now gained, a sort of significant space in U.S. politics and influence, I should say, in U.S. politics, that they would actually try to reassert their power and to dominate the world. They would try to reassert their power to dominate the world, and that's exactly what they're doing right now in our eyes. But people are not waking up to see that that's what is happening. It's the Jews. Listen to what this political economist here suggests. And this was written at the Substack, and we have Tucker Carlson's deceptive CIA persecution story. Remember, recently he was talking about the fact that the CIA was actually targeting him. And this is what this guy has to say. Tucker Carlson recently released a video on X in which he describes an attempt by the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States, CIA, to manufacture a criminal case against him. The reason, corresponding with people in Iran before the war. Let me see if I could share some of the excerpts of what Tucker Carlson, a very deceptive person, is suggesting. Again, he's like the Jeffrey Sachs of the world and talks a lot of truth, right? So you have to be able to discern when people are deceptive and take out some of the truth from them and run with it, but you also have to do your own studies. Okay? Listen to this deceptive person.
So the other day, I found out that the CIA is preparing some kind of criminal referral against me, a crime report, to the Department of Justice on the basis of a supposed crime I committed. What's that crime? Well, talking to people in Iran
Oh, sorry.
before the war. They read my texts. So the crime under consideration apparently would be the Foreign Agent Act or something like that, acting as an agent of a foreign power. And I don't expect this to go anywhere. I'm not too worried about an actual criminal case against me for a bunch of reasons. One, I'm not an agent of a foreign power. Unlike a lot of people commenting on U.S. politics and global affairs, I have only one loyalty, and that's the United States, and have never acted against it. Its interests are the only interests I care about because I'm from here and I have a lot of kids. So that's not a concern. I've also never taken money from anybody. Don't need it, don't want it, and that's provable. And moreover, it's my job to talk to everybody all the time and try and figure out what's happening around the world. That's literally what I do for a living, and I'm not going to stop doing that. Nor should I don't think. I'm also an American. I can talk to anybody. I have no secrets to divulge. So legally, I think the case is ludicrous, and I doubt it will even become a case. I'm bringing this up for a couple of reasons, though, and they're pretty obvious. One is that countries tend to become more authoritarian in wartime. It's just the nature of war. People are dying. The stakes are high. People's emotions have risen to a very high point, to a crescendo. And so there's much less tolerance for any kind of dissent in the homeland. The irony, of course, is the United States fights wars on behalf of freedom, but there's always less of it here in our country during war. So that's a widely recognized phenomenon, and it's likely to happen now too. Another point to make that is worth knowing is that the USIC, the intelligence agency, spy on Americans. Now, you probably knew that, and it's been revealed a lot, including by Julian Assange and Ed Snowden, both of whom are threatened with death for revealing it, but everyone knows.
Okay, so we just have to we can't spend the whole time, attach the video to the description. So these are people who are on and they are pretending as if they are educating the masses and they're part of the independent, as we say in media infrastructure. But we know that independence is according to your version of the truth, or what you think is your version of the truth. It's not necessary that they're independent. One of the things that Abraham Manhattan also revealed in his the Vatican in global politics is the fact that the Vatican controls Hollywood and controls the media, the independent media, and also what you call mainstream media. So don't believe what you're seeing here and seeing there. You actually have to view everything with a grain of salt. Take everything that you hear, you see, that your senses perceive with a grain of salt, and make sure that you verify everything, even in the Bible. We are tasked with doing that thing, that we should be like the Bereans, okay, who, when they heard the word of God, they ensured that they went home and they did their due diligence. Very important that you do that. But many of us are not doing it. We're not doing it in sciences. We're not doing it in religion. We're not doing it in anything right now. And that's why we are now entering another dark period. And America, particularly, a country that has so many resources, the fact of the matter is that it's a country with lots of wealth, even though it's concentrated, but the wealth is there. And there are things that you can do. People can read books, but they decide not to read books. They prefer to gossip and to listen and to watch sports. They love more entertainment, going to the movies, that occupies them than doing their due diligence. So now they're just left in the dark, and people like Tucker Carlson's and the Jeffrey Sachs of the world can and are deceiving them. Now, listen to what this host here is saying about Tucker Carlson. Did I play this before? I don't think I did, But let us listen to this here about your guy, Tucker Carlson, and talk about the Vatican, Vatican shills, such as the Jeffrey Sachs. Tucker Carlson is one. Okay? Let's listen to what they're saying about him and his Catholicism. Is he a Catholic, or does he want to become one? Tucker Carlson is known as an Episcopalian, but listen to what these people are suggesting. And they're Roman Catholics themselves, it appears, about your guy, Tucker Carlson.
You know what's frustrating about him?
What's that?
He's already there and he doesn't realize it.
Tucker Carlson talks with the star of The Chosen, Jonathan Brumi, who plays Jesus there. And while interviewing him, Carlson, who's officially Episcopalian, he says this: "I'm not a Catholic, but I've always thought that confession is the coolest thing they do." Watch this.
Confession.
I'm not Catholic, but I've always thought that confession's the coolest thing they do. It's a gift, man. It's a lifesaver.
Of course. When it became psychotherapy and you put like an atheist with bad judgment on the couch across from you, I think we lost something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the human need to connect, to unburden yourself, you know what's wrong, by the way. Most people know. Yeah. You don't need to be a Christian to know what's wrong. Everyone inside you, you know when you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And to say it out loud, to articulate it in words, is to rid yourself of it to some extent, I think. And
yeah. And then for the sacramental part of it, that's where the healing comes in. That's where the spiritual healing comes in.
So if you head over to LifeSite, you will see that this is actually not the first time that Tucker Carlson has talked positively about Catholicism, leading some to think that he might one day join the church. And reporter Stephen Cox at LifeSite says, Carlson has repeatedly taken an interest in the Catholic Church over the past several years. In a September 2022 interview, Father Vincent Lampert, a designated exorcist of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, speaking with him on the Catholic Church's ministry to people suffering from demonic possession, Tucker interviewed him and thought that was very interesting. Also, in August of 2024, Tucker said, "Some of my dearest, closest friends are Catholics," and he added, "They are the most fervent, sincere, on-target Christians I know." And he also told German Cardinal Gerhard Müller during an interview that "I'm not a Catholic, but I am interested." So that indeed is very interesting. And Tucker Carlson would...
So many of them, they will say that, but they are. And they might not be publicly Catholics, as Trump is not publicly Catholic, but he said that he was going to do, he loves the Catholic, and he was going to do their bidding. He was going to do everything that the Roman Catholic Church asks him to do. That's what he suggested. So this fact with the Pope, we don't know where that is coming from, because we know that 56% or 60%, close to 60% of American Catholics voted for Donald J. Trump. And the portion that voted for him, coming from the Roman Catholic demographics during his first term, was also significant. Okay? So we can say both elections, the first term and the second term, were influenced by the Roman Catholic papacy, the Roman Catholic Church. Because the US Catholics, they are submissive to what they call their Holy Father, the papacy, the Roman Catholic papacy. Okay? That's how the structure there operates. It's not a Protestant church where Christ is at the center of your lives. The Pope is at front and center of their lives. Very important that you understand that. On the face of it, the story seems plausible. The article is here saying about Tucker Carlson and the fact that the CIA is actually targeting him. It would be par for the course for the CIA to manufacture a smear campaign against someone influential who does not serve its interests, although the basis in this particular case sounds impossibly thin. In fact, we know from its history of dirty tricks and assassinations of inconvenient people that what Carson describes would be quite mild by comparison. And in recent years, Carson has presented himself as an anti-establishment radical and about turn from his Fox News years that no one has really critically interrogated. The problem is that Carson's overall performance is completely implausible and at odds with his own background. Those facts suggest that he probably works for the CIA. And for those of you who don't know, the CIA is popularly called the Catholics in Action or the Catholic Intelligence Agency. Okay, Donovan, was it Williams? Yeah, was a Catholic, the founder of the CIA. So we have to understand that these are also Catholic institutions that control the United States of America. As I wrote previously, the very first place Carson applied to work was the CIA. And in so doing, he was following in the footsteps of his father, who was a propagandist entrenched in the post-JFK deep state that at the time and subsequently has been destroying democracy in the United States from within, leaving only the facade. The story is that Carson was rejected and decided to become a journalist instead. The more likely truth is that he was accepted but deployed as a deep cover asset into the journalism community. He's now left Fox pretending as if he is an independent journalist. And many of them are doing that too. They're using a ploy here where they leave so-called mainstream media and they go over into what is called independent, journalism on independent platforms, but they're doing a greater work because people now say, well, they were kicked out from CNN or from Fox News, so it means therefore that they want to tell you the truth. That is far from the truth, and they might divulge a little bit more. They might be a little bit more nuanced on these so-called independent platforms, but it does not mean that they have changed. And this is what you have to understand. And it is an effective strategy used by the powers that be. You've got to understand this. Tucker Carlson cannot be trusted. Okay, and I'm not suggesting here that you should trust anyone. I mean, not even me. You must be able to confirm your sources and don't believe that people are experts and that they know, well, they might know a little bit more than you. It doesn't mean that they're interpreting what they know and they're translating it into truth. And that is what you want. You want to have truth on your side, not just people with plenty of knowledge who can tell you and spit out knowledge at their own whim. That is not how it goes. And many of you are deceived because you are deceived by titles and people who appear to be very intelligent, but are not so much cognizant of what truth is, or they are suffering from cognitive dissonance. Very important that you understand what I'm saying here to you. Now, remember too that Tucker Carlson was one of, if not the main person that caused Trump to win the election. He was behind. He was behind Trump 100%. Now he's claiming that he made a mistake, or did he? And is the Vatican also claiming that it made a mistake by supporting him? Remember, Donald Trump made some very important statements about the Pope. He said that, without the Pope, he won. The Catholic Church, helped him to get the presidency. And he says that without him, Donald Trump, the Pope, would not have won as the first US Pope in Rome. So, is Trump speaking the truth? Because sometimes he speaks, even though it might be raw, and you don't like to hear what he's saying, but sometimes he speaks the truth. Just like you see sometimes the Tucker Carlsons and the Professor Jeffrey Sachs will say things that are true. Okay? But beneath that, you also have deception. And both could be playing different roles according to the Roman Catholic papacy and how they operate, and the Hegelian dialectic that they understand that best deceive the world by, allowing both sides to be fighting against each other, when they believe in the same sort of agenda. Okay, so that is what we're saying. And Trump himself, Catholic in orientation, even though he is also an Episcopalian. Okay, so both of them are so-called Episcopalian, but they believe in the Catholic faith. Now, I don't know what is happening behind the scenes, but based on what took place at the dinner at the Washington Hilton Hotel tells me that something is happening that we have to be careful of. Some dark days are ahead, and our speeches are going to be curtailed. Our speeches are going to be curtailed. Okay? Somebody was asking the question here, Trump's nightmare 2025 is going as I predicted. So he's suggesting that Trump is going to have a nightmare. Okay? Will that happen? Will they eventually assassinate the president? We hope not. Okay? But we have to be very, very much alert and vigilant in terms of what is happening. Okay? We've got to. And the Guardian newspaper today, the UK Guardian newspaper, had a very interesting article that it wrote about the whole incident of what took place at the Washington Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. It says here that anti-Trump sentiment being examined as motive for White House press dinner shooting. So they're already telling us that be careful now what you say about Trump. It could be now further curtailing our speech, and that's one of the reasons why they allowed it to have happened. It could be a false flag, right? It could be staged at a staged event, as so many people are suggesting. Investigators are looking into anti-Trump sentiment as being a motive for the attacker who sought to breach the White House Correspondents Dinner in Washington, D.C., where the U.S. president and top members of the administration were present. Officials have said that the shooter likely was targeting Donald Trump and other senior administration officials. We do believe, based upon just a very preliminary start to understanding what happened, and that he was targeting members of the administration, acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche said in a TV interview. The suspect, who is in custody after being subdued by members of law enforcement as he rushed through the hotel venue, is set to be arraigned in federal court on Monday. He faces charges of assault of a federal officer, discharging a firearm, attempting to kill a federal officer, but Blanche said that depending on how the investigation goes, he might also be charged with the attempted assassination of Trump. Very serious. Investigators are assessing rather, a manifesto reportedly written by the suspect, who has been identified as Cole Thomas Allen, 31, of Torrance, California. In the alleged manifesto, which was published in full by New York Post, Allen created a list of targets for the shooting, ranked from the highest to lowest priority, with Trump administration officials at the top. So we don't know what is happening, because we do know that they also betray people at the top. We saw what happened with many assassination attempts and assassinations, rather, in the United States. Kennedys and the Abraham Lincolns and all of these people. Okay, so you can't trust what you see in the United States. You can't think that you are protected, because only God can protect you. Because even the people that you think are your friends or your colleagues or your fraternity or your sorority sister and brother might not have your back. Okay, you've got to understand these things, because these, organizations are controlled by the devil anyway. They're cults. So you've got to be very, very careful of what you see. And the United States is engulfed by all of these societies and people pretending as if they're important. Okay, but at the end of the day, if you don't ask God for protection, then these people can snuff your life out in a second. Okay? And we don't know if they're after President Trump, or maybe they're not after him, but if they should unalive him, then it will change the very foundation of the US Constitution and the entire landscape there, which will usher us into an age of darkness and complete dictatorship. So I hope that you're looking at these things happening in the media. right? And you're not just looking at what Jeffrey Sachs and what the Tucker Carlsons are saying and other people too, Clayton Morris and his Natalie. You're not just looking at these programs and viewing them because you think that they are speaking what you want to hear. What you need to understand, some of what you don't want to hear might be the truth. And you have to explore these things. And that is what many of you do not want to do. Because what it does is that it creates an earthquake for you. It shatters your hope of what you think is truth. If you think that Black people are going to liberate you, if you think African redemption is what is going to liberate this world, then, and it's not, which it is not, then of course your entire infrastructure, the ground on which you move, will shake and you will be disappointed. But why allow yourself to be disappointed and your hearts and your hopes to be dashed? When you know that that is not true. Okay? You know that human beings cannot be relied upon because the heart of flesh, the arms of flesh, the people's hearts are wicked. Okay? People's hearts are wicked. And they'll deceive you. They'll betray you at the most opportune time for them. Okay? So understand that if things continue as they are in the United States, some dark days are ahead for DC, for the entire country. And you are going to see, and I hope not, many, many more false flag events in the United States of America and around the world. Are you ready? Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Like the video so that it can be shared with as many people on the platform.